And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here covering the Rowdies. You already know that by now. That's why you're listening. That's why you tuned in. I am here tonight with my usual co-host, Carlos. How are you doing, Carlos, as we record and prepare for this weekend versus Memphis?
James, it is a mildly momentous day in my life. About 4 hours ago, walked out of my last undergraduate class of my college career. So it's a nice little fun. Thank you. Nice little fun Tuesday for me. Spent the afternoon just hanging out with some of my friends, some of my fraternity brothers, and kind of realizing, oh my goodness, it's kind of coming to an end. So spent a lot of time outside today. Of course, repping the Rowdies with my nice little black and gray polo here.
There we go.
Played a little die. You ever played die? With like the dice, you throw it up in there. It's a fun game.
I haven't.
It's a classic. What else did I do? That's it. That's all I did. My cousin's in town. She surprised me with a nice little visit, so we're gonna go grab dinner later today. It's a good day. It's a good day, James, and it's even better because the Rowdies had a lovely game against none other than New Mexico United, featuring former Rowdy Dayon Harris. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Before any of that, James Knowles, what is going on down in what I always assume is a sunny Tampa, Florida?
You are correct with that. For the past, let's say, 2 weeks now, I have been getting, I don't know why my work computer does this, but it gives me updates on the weather. And one of those updates includes very high UV. So that is what I've been getting for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And that's not good for a pale person like myself. So I just kind of hide behind the curtain that I have here, like SpongeBob when he's playing the piano in that one episode. But if we get back to the topic at hand, which is soccer, folks.
That's a great pull, by the way. I'm not letting that fly by. That's a core memory that you just brought out. Anyway, let's talk about Rowdies again. Go back to what you're saying.
Yeah, we are not here to talk about SpongeBob. I guess apparently we could do an episode like that, but we're not going to do that, folks. We're going to stick to soccer because last week the Rowdies hosted New Mexico United and won 3-0 in a great game. In our own standings, Eureka and Carlos got a point, putting them both on 3. That leaves me, your self-appointed soccer expert, behind on 1 point. That's how well I am doing at this awesome game of predictions, folks. But we have another chance for me to show just how good at predictions I am. Today, we have a game, we have to preview. It's not today, but we have to preview a game away this weekend to Memphis 901. And speaking of folks, May 4th at 4 p.m., our first watch party of the year is at Berry House, May 4th at 4 p.m. Please join us there this weekend. If I have to drag you there kicking and screaming, well, I won't do that, but please just show up, and then I won't have to even think about it. We're going to have some help from a Memphis podcast this week in previewing all of that, so please stay tuned for the 901 Soccer Podcast. We appreciate all the help we can get in getting this game previewed for you guys, not only today, but there will be a live pregame show when we are at Berry House this weekend, so show up again May 4th at 4 p.m. We also have some USL news to cover this week. We'll get to that at the end of the show because there's so much going on today. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube or any other major platform for podcasts. And of course, please follow us on social media, including Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, wherever you are at RBLR Sports. Now, Carlos, let us go into the quick recap.
James, none other than your boy. Farr was in goal. Jordan Doherty in front of him. Forrest Lasso, Aaron Guillen. On the wings, you had Munjoma and Bodley. Unsurprisingly, at this point, Munjoma continuing his dominating of that right wing back spot with Hilton and Crisostomo in between them. In front of them, you had Cal Jennings, Manuel Arteaga, and Joshua Perez continuing a great run of form, who had another solid game. This game got started very, very quickly. There's plenty of early chances and a quick goal from Cal Jennings in the, let me fact check myself. In the 7th minute, it was a lovely little corner play. Forrest Lasso caught that ball on the back post with his head, put it right back into the middle of the box. No reaction from New Mexico's defense. Cal Jennings had an easy finish there. It wouldn't be the easiest finish of the game for him, though. Just 9 minutes later, he got his second goal when he was pushing up, forced the New Mexico goalie into making a hasty pass. Arteaga steps up, intercepts the ball, and squares it to Cal Jennings, who, again, had the easiest goal of the game for him. Open goal, nothing for New Mexico United to do except play it out of the back better. 2-0 Rowdies, 16 minutes into the game. After that, New Mexico, I did believe, New Mexico had a few chances themselves soon after. Rowdy's back line played pretty well. Jordan Farr had a good game. And by the second half, it was the Rowdies who continued a good performance. This was one of our questions a few weeks ago. Can the Rowdies play a full 90? They proved it that they could against a really good team in New Mexico. And Arteaga got his goal off of the penalty, which he created as well, by the way. Won't get much credit for that. People will forget the creation of that. But he ran down the left wing, dribbled in, and was able to draw a easy call for the referee. James, this is an interesting note. If either Cal Jennings or Arteaga has scored, the other has only failed to score in one out of those five. Let's restart that. If Cal Jennings or Manuel Arteaga have scored, the other failed to score in 1 out of the 5 games in which either one of those players did score. So they're hot, and they're hot together, and it's awesome because that's kind of what you want in a dynamic duo up top. I think the question this past offseason was if Arteaga would be able to slot into that duo that kind of he had with JJ Williams. Cal Jennings and JJ Williams last year, and I think it's coming together. It looks really good, and clearly they're both scoring, when the player scores. So, we bumbled through that stat. I mean, I bumbled through that stat a little bit there, but we got it out there. And the Rowdies played a great game. They certainly did not jumble. I don't know. There's a word for that. Their way through this game. A dominating performance. I think maybe a little bit unfair to New Mexico. I think they played a pretty decent game. But certainly the Rowdies outplayed them. 3-0 Rowdies was your final score. Another 3 points for them. Only their third win of the season. Still undefeated, by the way. Only 3 teams are undefeated at this point in the year. Sacramento Republic is one of them in first place in the West. Charleston is in first place in the East. Again, the only other undefeated team. Charleston leads with 21 points from 9 games. They're 3 points ahead of Louisville City, who is on 7 games. Detroit City are 3 points behind that with a game in hand. We have 13 points, and we sit nicely in 4th place. Out west, Sacramento lead with 18 points from 8 games. Again, they're still undefeated. They're 3 points ahead of OC after 8 games. Monterey Bay, New Mexico, and San Antonio are just behind them. And only 2 draws for El Paso. So, James, how are your prediction standings? You have 1 point or 2 points?
I have a solid 1 point.
So you would be behind El Paso still. You would be last place in the league, but you're not far behind. There's still room for you to come back and overtake El Paso. And that's it, folks. It was a really, really lovely game. There's a lot to talk about here. Lots of plays, lots of really interesting dynamics this game. I think it was a really fun one to watch. James, you were there. The crowd was great. It was on national TV. It was everything you want out of a Rowdies performance against a pretty solid team in New Mexico. So, that being said, let's jump into this. The Rowdies seem to have struggled frequently at the beginnings of games and also sometimes at the end of games. We've had, slow starts, and when we haven't had slow starts, we play a good 45 at the beginning. It seems like we can sometimes fail to close out a game and play a full 90. I tweeted that at halftime. I was hoping I wouldn't jinx anything, but I didn't, and we played a fantastic game. What was the difference here, James, from how you saw things? The same team. We're still playing with our same players, essentially. It wasn't really changing the lineup or anything, but it seems like things are clicking maybe a bit more throughout the full 90 minutes. What did you see?
Yeah, well, I will say we started in a very similar fashion to the last couple of games. The goal of the team when we have the ball, this is according to Coach Robbie Nielsen, they want to play in the opposition half. So the sooner that they can get our center backs up to the halfway line, and that is our line of confrontation, the better. Obviously, that is a tough game to play against certain teams, and that is a very dangerous game to play at times. But I think that we have been able to do it pretty well recently. And then once we are in that position, what we usually try to do is either isolate one wing or the other, where they will have multiple players creating a numerical overload, to put it in those nice fancy terms that make it sound like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to
Numerical
tactics.
overload.
Yeah, it's really fun to say. But Jordan Doherty combines on the right with Eddie Munjoma and Danny Crisostomo. They draw in the players on the other team's left side to their little passing triangle, usually a triangle. And then when some space opens up in behind, Cal Jennings slides his way into that space and they look for him. On the left side, obviously, it is very similar. Aaron Guillen will combine with Blake Bodley and Josh Perez, and they will get their little triangles going back and forth. When the opposition's right side all converges on them, that space opens up, and Manuel Arteaga can slide into there. So it's very nice how they try to isolate teams on one wing or the other. And of course, there is the connective tissue of Lewis Hilton in the middle if we need to switch one side to the other. And that happened quite a few times in this game. But we did it to very good effect in the last 3 games. And Carlos, we have had incredible statistics for all of those 3 games while I am on this podcast, because this is talking about the Rowdies. I wanted to bring this up here and mention that our chances created versus the Miami FC, our big chances, and this is according to FOTMob, just so everyone knows, 8 big chances created led to 24 total shots. Those are some crazy numbers. Go to El Paso, 4 big chances created, 21 total shots. Again, crazy numbers. This past game versus New Mexico, 5 big chances created, 16 total shots. Actually, fewer shots, which I would not have necessarily guessed, but all very interesting to keep in mind. This is working for us. We have the players who are all doing very well in these positions. And I think that for us to get everybody into that space where we want to be, that of course compresses the field, and it makes whatever opposition team, it makes them a little crazy, you could say, because they have to make sure they're already so close to their goal. They have to make sure that their defending is on top, and they have to make sure that they're following their players. Unfortunately, frequently, that means that they are all going to converge in one space or another, like we just talked about on the wings. And then that gives us a little more space for some very, very good, very, very informed strikers right now. Cal and Manu Arteaga, they are doing absolutely fantastic up top. And of course, they took advantage. You already mentioned how Cal Jennings got his 2 goals. The only issue that I have with Cal Jennings is, good Lord, there have been so few times that someone was that close to a hat trick and didn't get it. It was, I feel bad for him. It's not a criticism. I feel bad for him because scoring a goal obviously is one of the hardest things to do in this sport. It's the reason that we all know the goal scorers' names as opposed to the center backs' names most of the time. But I am kind of, there were 2 would-be goals in this game that I'm going to point to. One of them was Cal Jennings, and he shot when he could have crossed for Manuel Arteaga. Actually, that is not the would-be goal, but that is another would-be goal. He wanted to get his third goal.
Yeah.
He wanted to get his third.
That was one of the few times I pointed to Cal Jennings and said he made the wrong choice on that play.
Yes.
It's been hard. You can just focus on him, be as cynical as possible. It's been almost impossible to find a moment Cal Jennings has been in the wrong. That was the one time I've been able to see in this early start to the year where he clearly made the wrong choice, clearly wanted that hat trick. But I have a point.
And who
to
could
make
blame
about
him
that
though?
Yeah. But it's not even like this is a selfish play or anything either, by the way, because penalty came up later on. He was sitting on 2 goals. There was not even a discussion. It was clear that he didn't even want that penalty. It was Arteaga's penalty all day. He earned it. He took it and whatever. And he scored that. Cal Jennings gave him a high five and that was it. I thought Cal Jennings might be yo, come on, I'm on 2 goals, buddy. Give me that there. No, it was. This is not a selfish player by any means. I think he just wanted that trick really badly in that moment. Made the wrong choice. But yeah, I was going to mention that too. Would have been a free goal for the Rowdies. Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing that happens when the Rowdies compress the opposition team already into their own half, naturally, that gives us the ability to play on the press when they are already close to their own goal. That's what happened on our second goal. We scored because Cal Jennings put the goalkeeper Alexander, one of those Tembakis, under pressure, and he played a ball out to, I believe it was Talon Maples, who gave the ball away to Manuel Arteaga. It was a pass reminiscent of me back in the defense for my own team in the adult league that I'm playing. It was not reminiscent of a professional, but I'm sure Talon Maples has a much longer highlight reel than I do, let's say. Either way, Manuel Arteaga ended up with the ball, and he did the right thing and crossed it to Cal Jennings. So all of those things led to the Rowdies getting a very quick start. Unfortunate that we didn't actually get 3 before the halftime. It's not unfortunate because we won 3-0, but it's unfortunate just because I thought that we deserved to have 3 before the halftime whistle. And even I think Cal Jennings could have had 3, regardless of missing that one chance that you and I had just spoken about. It was a really, really good half in terms of all of the strategies that we like to employ. I think that it was also really good in terms of the execution. Obviously, we were able to play our game and we were able to do it very well. That's not always the case. I think, Carlos, you and I can point to games where we played our game well and we didn't execute, or we executed well despite not playing our game. We did both. And this is a culmination of 3 games in a row now where we're doing this. So at this point, I'm feeling really good about how everything was going. But what did you see for the rest of the first half before we keep going into that thread?
I think you talked about one of the things I was going to mention. That second goal in particular was, like, I think the press can be sometimes hard to miss, just like the flow of the game. It's easier to pick up on when you realize, oh, like we scored a goal because we're pressuring high up the field. It looked like we were doing really well with that all game. In the right moments, I think New Mexico is able to adjust later on, but if that's something that we can just keep going with, like keeping teams off rhythm early on in the game, I don't see why we can't have more of these really good early starts. It just seems like New Mexico didn't even settle in. Like they weren't really comfortable at any point. They had that one chance with Deion Harris that was offside, which thank God, by the way, because I thought for sure, oh my goodness, former Rowdy playing at home or playing away, he's coming in to prove himself. I thought for sure that was going to be a goal. As soon as Deion Harris got on the end of that, I was like, okay, free goal for New Mexico. But
quick side note on that real fast. Jordan Farr, amazing hands. How he kept that out of the goal, I just simply don't understand. But continue with where you're going.
No, absolutely. Like Jordan Farr is the unspoken hero this early part of the year as well, because he's had more than a few incredible saves. I think he has gone a little bit underappreciated just because we're talking a lot about the attack that has been slow and then not slow and then kind of weird in the middle for a little bit and then it's kind of found its rhythm now. And he hasn't had like a ton of big saves to make, but when he's had to make them, he's made them. I think our back line has been fantastic. I love Doherty back there, by the way. I'm in love with Jordan Doherty in the back line. I thought that was going to be more of like a temporary thing and Kleeman might step in. Just because Doherty, like, by trade is more of a defensive midfielder and has played a lot like in the back line when we've needed him to. Played in that like right wing back spot for a little bit that one game, which was kind of weird. Like he knows how to play in different areas, but this seems to be like a really good fit for him. This like back 3 style thing where you can kind of move up the field still a little bit. I think he can support Manjoma in like just the right amount of offensive. Like he can get up the field just enough to where it's not like he's trying to do something he's not. And I think Manjoma's benefited from that as well. He had a pretty decent game. Yeah, I mean, it truly good first half. Like you really can't complain about much. I have some other notes here about that. What happened? Yeah, I want to mention that corner kick again. I mean, Forrest Lasso has been crucial on these corners. I think it's easy for us to point out, like Forrest Lasso's big guy. He must like be influential, but then you actually like look at him play and you see those corner kicks. It seems like every corner kick involves him at this point, whether he's like, heading them towards a goal and the goalie's making a crazy save or he's putting them across square across the box like that. He's been in great form and I'm surprised he doesn't have like more goals and more assists at this point. There was one game, and I can't remember which one it was, where he should have had like 2. It might have been that Miami game. He could have had like 2 goals.
I know he was he had a really good shot off of a free kick or something like that against El Paso too.
Yeah, El Paso as well. Like he's been on fire. Like obviously having a great defensive showing most games. Like he's getting up there in the attack as well, and it's really, really good to see. He's always been a threat, but it seems like he's much more noticeable this year, and he's much more active and involved and engaged in that side of things. Obviously, got himself an assist. I'm really curious to see what his offensive numbers are going to be at the end of the year because I think they'll be surprisingly high. It'll be a quiet, 3 or 4 goals and a few assists on his part. Other thing I wanted to mention, this was from USL Tactics, as everything is. Oh, look at that. Shout out Tinder. Just got a new match on Tinder. Let's go. More importantly, USL Tactics, John Morrissey. He said that he pointed out this stat, and this is really, really incredible. It goes back to your big chances created type thing. Similar stat. He said the Rowdies have been the best team of the month by expected goals value, by expected goals number. So across the USL, there's been no team this past month that had a higher expected goals value in its games. The Rowdies have been truly just killing it in the attack. It's been really, really fun to watch, even though it was frustrating in that El Paso game, right? We've seen it we mentioned it. We mentioned it on that episode as well. It's going to come. The process, trust the process. It's you could look at the El Paso game and look at the numbers and look at the opportunities and be like, oh, surely we would have won 4-0, 5-0. Obviously, it didn't happen. But it's clicking, and this is clear proof of that. So I'm really, really happy with how that first half went. We can jump into the second half too now, James, specifically. I'm not really focusing on the first half anymore. I just realized. Do you have anything specific you want to point out in the second half? Because I just wanted to mention really quickly that I think I was still cautiously optimistic after we went up 2-0 because of that San Antonio game earlier on in the year. And because we've struggled to close out games in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I even tweeted about it at halftime, like I said. But I mean, it wasn't the case this time. We were locked in. Did you notice anything different between this game and maybe some of the past games where we might not have been as locked in or something? I don't know if you noticed anything tactically or if, I don't know, maybe they just got a good talking to after that El Paso game. Sorry, after any one of these games where they kind of struggled to close it out in the second half. Something was different, and it might just be that things are clicking fully now. I don't really know.
If I had to point to anything, that's what I would point to, is that things are clicking and people are just starting to get to understand each other a lot better than they did, because it's hard to put a team together with a bunch of new faces. Not that everyone is a new face, but at the same time, you do have several of them. So it's going to take a little while for everybody to get on the same page. We saw that last year too, under Neil Collins, and probably the year before. But yeah, I spoke with Aaron Guillen after the game, as well as Cal Jennings and Manuel Arteaga. Don't know if that's giving anything away at this point or not, but Aaron Guillen, I asked him similar questions. What is the difference between this game and prior games in this area and that area, blah, blah, blah. He said to me that definitely people are getting more used to each other and more comfortable with each other. But along those same lines, it's the Rowdies playing their own game and being confident in themselves effectively, and that sounds like a bit of a truism, or a bit of a just something that players say. But it's also, especially with a team of this quality, I think that it actually means more, because if you think about it, the Rowdies do have the ability. So this past game actually is a perfect example. I don't know why I don't just say it, but New Mexico is a very good team. They were on a 4-game winning streak when they came to Tampa Bay. It's not as if we were playing some slouches out there by any means, but the Rowdies have the quality to impose themselves on a team of New Mexico's quality at the same time. So if we are able to play within ourselves, if we are able to play the way that we know we can play, so that would be holding the ball on the wings, switching sides when we need to, compressing the field into their half, and getting Forrest Lasso's head on the end of all of their clearances to try and make sure that it stays in their half, not letting them break with a long ball because Forrest Lasso is so tall. If we can play all of those different things and make sure that we are good enough, and make sure that we are on our game, and by we, I mean the Rowdies, not myself or you, Carlos, but the players who are actually out there, of course.
Well, I was an elite right back in my prime. If they need me to step in, Jordan Doherty doesn't want to play right back when everybody's injured, Call me up. I'll sign a day contract. I'm okay with that.
Guys, you know where to reach Carlos.
Yeah.
He's right there. Just reach
Yeah,
out to
at
him.
Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Just hit me up.
There you go. But yeah, I would just say that I think that Aaron Guillen is absolutely correct about that. It's playing within themselves. They rarely allowed New Mexico chances. If I go back to the game, let me go back to the stats here. Yeah, if I go back to the game, the big chances that New Mexico created, two, they obviously missed both of those, and I think one of those was the Dayon Harris one that we had just spoken about, which Jordan Farr, again, amazing hands. The fact that he kept that out at all, I thought that was a sure goal. He kept it out and he held it. It was amazing. But we limited them to two big chances the whole game, and that's really tough to do for a team as good as New Mexico has been. So that comes down to us controlling the play, not necessarily the ball. I think the stats figures for possession were pretty even. They were, but yeah, it just comes down to us playing our game and keeping the ball where we want it to stay. So that's what I can point to for the second half. Before we get into anything else, I do want to highlight a couple of players really fast, players that we're not going to get to in our man of the match awards for this one, because so many players played well that it'd be hard to nominate every single one of them. But Eureka, I guess, hasn't said that we couldn't nominate the whole team, so maybe we'll just keep that in the back of our heads.
Yeah,
but
we make the rules. I forgot. Like sometimes I forget. This is like also like this is just our podcast. We can just do whatever we want, James.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But
I did want to highlight Jordan Farr. You had already mentioned him, Carlos. A couple of really great saves in all of the last three games that kept the game dead even. If we go back to the Miami game, we think about those chances that Frank Lopez had when it was only 1-0. Frank Lopez could have tied it up on multiple occasions, and Jordan Farr was huge, absolutely huge. Last week he had some big saves. Yes, last week he had some big saves where he pushed like those leaping saves where you have to reach really far and push the ball over the bar. He did that. And in this game, it was against Dayon Harris. So incredible stuff from Jordan Farr. I really wanted to highlight him. And the other player that I wanted to highlight, I think this is something that you also had in your notes, Carlos, but Christian Ortiz. Oh my God. That kid is good at soccer. He is just 17 years old now. Just 17. And man, he's huge. He's a fighter. He is. I was just saying this before we started recording, Carlos, but when the play developed that he got his chance in the 76th minute, I was watching for it. I knew when he came on, he was going to get something, because this is the most time that he's had in a game so far. Apparently, Robbie Nielsen just told him, go out there, and if you get a chance, make sure you hit the target. He did hit the target. Unfortunately, it was saved, but my wife and I were sitting at the top of the 306 section where we usually sit, and I was already running when he was on the breakaway. I was already about to run down all the stairs from the 306 until I got to the fence where they would not let me on the field. But unfortunately, the goalkeeper saved it. I was so sure that was going in. Christian Ortiz is going to get a goal. He is good at soccer. And also, I don't know if this is breaking news. This was said in the press conference, so I assume that this is fair to say. But Robbie Nielsen also mentioned that they are looking to sign Christian Ortiz to a full-time contract this upcoming week. I don't know if it gets finalized this upcoming week, but if that's breaking news, then fair enough. They are looking to sign Christian Ortiz to a full-time senior-level contract, not just the USL Academy contract that I believe he, as well as Nick Skubis and Amari Folks, are on. So, yeah, there we go. Christian Ortiz is my sub man of the match, my youth man of the match.
Yeah, that would be a first for us, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, we've had several USL Academy players come through, and they go out, and we don't really hear about them much again.
Tate Johnson went to the MLS Next Pro League, and then Santi Castaneda. Actually, by the way, Santi Castaneda with Duisburg and the German third division has made 24 appearances, which is crazy. So good for him.
I heard about that. Yeah, I forgot about him. That's kind of fun news. It's a nice little fun fact. But yeah, that would be a first on my knowledge. For us taking a academy player and turning it into a full contract, because what usually happens with these players is we keep them here for a little bit. They do their internship here. They get a game in the Open Cup, and then they go and play college soccer. Tate Johnson and Santi Castaneda, I think, are the exceptions. this would be a really interesting story. I mean, Christian Ortiz looks really good. He seems like he could truly like grow into a serious power for the Rowdies and be a legitimate contender to like play games. So he's come in like kind of when the game is a little bit out of hand. But I mean, look, he's got potential. He's got serious potential. I'm kind of looking forward to see where that goes. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's kind of like a wild card, to be honest. Like, he just looks really good, and I think it's kind of a surprise. I don't think we usually expect that much out of a USL Academy player. Tate Johnson, again, maybe an exception. He played a bit more than I thought he was going to. Christian Ortiz could be a Tate Johnson-esque player, could play more games, could play more minutes, and we'll see what his role will be. Especially with these, weird Open Cup back-to-back games against Birmingham coming up, you might need some minutes from deep in the roster. So Christian Ortiz could get some minutes there as well, and maybe get on the score sheet. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, just a little leaning into Birmingham because it's early to talk about that. But one of the little clips that we get from the Rowdies, they asked about possible rotation coming up because we have 3 games in very quick succession here. He said that he wants to come out and win this weekend. Naturally, you would. He said that he also wants to go out and win versus Birmingham in the Open Cup because it's the Open Cup. So if we're going to get any rotation, it might maybe be one player. I'm assuming what we will probably see is some rotation against Birmingham when we play again at home, and that would be May 11th back in the league. So I'll turn it back to you now, Carlos.
I don't much else to say. Good notes there. I will say again, I just want to reemphasize how interesting that dynamic was on that penalty kick. I think it was a great penalty, by the way. Beautiful little Panenka down the middle. Really just clowning Tim Bacchus. But again, I think it's a really great show of kind of like where this team is mentally, chemistry wise, together. The intangibles between Cal Jennings and Arteaga, especially. There was clearly no intention of Cal Jennings to go over there and be like, "Yo, I need that. Give me that ball. Let me get my hat trick." He wanted Arteaga to take that. He earned it, and Arteaga took it and scored that goal. Some teams have like a designated penalty kick guy that just always takes it. Maybe that was the case. Even then, Cal Jennings, no intention of being like, "Hey, give me that hat trick." It was always Arteaga. So I think that's really cool, and I think that's really, really worth highlighting because we've seen egos in soccer. It's kind of almost a part of the game. Big egos, big personalities. I don't think there is a lot of that on this team. And sometimes you want some of that. It's entertaining. You want a guy to just kind of like be a Jamie Tart kind of guy sometimes. I don't know. Great show, by the way. I can't believe there's people that still haven't watched that. But yeah, I mean, this is just a really, really well-connected team. It seems like the personalities get along really well. It seems like it's a team that's built to play together. Highly competitive, don't get me wrong. It's not like these are like players that are just kind of laid back, chill. Like, no, like they want to win. And, it seems like you can see the emotion come out, especially Lewis Hilton, dog sometimes out there.
Yeah.
And even Christian Ortiz. It goes from top to bottom. So I think that's really, really cool stuff. And that's a great thing to note here. I hope he gets on the score sheet. Christian Ortiz is quickly becoming, I think, a favorite of folks on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see him grow into a really, really interesting prospect. I'm really, really, really curious to see how his career goes. I was going to pull like a Star Wars quote, but then I forgot how the quote goes. You ever seen Star Wars, James, where Palpatine's like, "We'll follow your career closely, young one." Anyway, whatever. Watch Star Wars. It's a great show, a great movie series. James, anything else on the second half, or should we jump into our? Oh my goodness, why am I texting so loud? Or we should jump into the man of the match, or is it too early? You got anything else to talk about here?
No, I think that we covered everything. We even talked about all the high chances and shots numbers from the last 3 games. Let's do man of the match.
Let's do it. I'll give you my man of the match first. I think mine was really difficult because I love picking the guy that scores the most goals in the game. But that guy, Cal Jennings, was already on the USL Team of the Week. So I'm going to take the other goal scorer in this game, Manuel Arteaga. Arteaga has been on fire in goals-wise, slightly less than Cal Jennings.
Only slightly.
But only slightly. But, I mean, he's been doing a lot. I think a bit more outside of that than Cal Jennings even. He creates so many chances. He created that chance for Christian Ortiz, by the way. I mean, Christian Ortiz intercepted that ball at the midfield, but Arteaga held it, and then played a dime of a pass, right through the New Mexico defenders. It was beautiful, beautiful stuff. That's not usually something you see out of like a main man striker like Arteaga. He can do it all. He's truly he's quick, he's big, he's a playmaker, and that's a highly underappreciated aspect of his game. And he showed that in this game. He was getting in the way of passes. He was creating turnovers with the press. Again, he's sneaky quick for the build he has. He's sneaky quick. He's big. And on top of that, he creates chances that lead to goals. He's special. He's on fire. And again, on top of just scoring goals, he's creating chances. And keep an eye on that because he's going to get more and more assists throughout the year. I think he's going to be one of those players that has a really high goal and assist count by the end of the year. That's really hard to do, obviously in soccer. But he's gonna be one of those players because he's just on fire, clicking on all cylinders right now, especially in that duo with Cal Jennings. It's lovely, lovely, lovely stuff to watch. Again, shout out to Christian Ortiz, an honorable shout out, an honorable man of the match too behind him. James, who do you got?
Well, really quickly before I get to that, I do want to say in the post game, they also mentioned how both Manuel Arteaga and Cal Jennings have mostly through their career played as individual strikers up top on their own. They have been making obviously a system now where the two of them are more of a duo, and they've been working especially in training on making those two a duo rather than two individual players. So they're getting more used to that, and I think that we're seeing the very beginnings of how good this is going to be. And speaking of potential hat tricks, Manuel Arteaga also could have had one. He hit the crossbar. He was this close on another chance, but yeah, he's looking great. I'm really liking that. My man of the match, however, is a defender, and that is Aaron Guillen. Aaron Guillen, from my perspective in the stands, had a great game. I really loved watching him. I think that he was brilliant in terms of everything that he did on the defensive side. The only thing that I would ever complain about was he was involved on the play that led to the chance where Dayon Harris's shot was saved. It wasn't something that he caused. I would say that it was tracking back from other players, but he held up his man. So I wouldn't even necessarily put that down to him. But the other thing was attacking wise, he was very important for creation with Blake Bodley and Josh Perez on the left wing, something that we've already talked about. And I think that he or Jordan Doherty could have been a man of the match in this one. We could have given it to plenty of players, but from my perspective, Aaron Guillen was one of the players that I noticed involved in so many different things that I had to give it to him here. So thank you for speaking with us after the game, Mr. Guillen. It was awesome to get your perspective on things. Now, folks, we have a game coming up this weekend to preview. But before I do that, I just want to say, hey, May 4th at 4 p.m., what are you doing? That's this Saturday. Are you going to join us at Berry House off the Ybor City Strip? I believe that you should do that. It is on the Tampa side. Again, the Rowdies are having their own watch party on the St. Pete side of the bridge. So if you live over there, please join them. But if you don't, you've got another option. Please join us at Berry House. There will be beer, pitcher specials, halftime swag giveaway. I have official merch from the Rowdies in the other room. It is real stuff from the team, not just my bootleg stuff. I keep that in the closet where no one can see it because it's terrible. There will be a live pregame show put on by us with RBLR Sports. And again, there will be beer pitcher specials. I'm saying that twice because it is fantastic.
Will there be beer pitcher specials?
Please join us for that at Berry House, folks. Now, Carlos, we have the lovely folks at 901 Soccer Podcast helping us out to do the preview, but I just want to do a little preview of the preview here, and I will allow you to take that away before we bring them in.
Absolutely. Let's just jump into this really quickly. We'll give you our bit, and then we'll bring in the experts. This weekend, May 4th at 4 p.m., heard there will be beer pitcher specials in Ybor. Come by. We play Memphis 901 FC in the lovely state of Tennessee, Rocky Top, Tennessee. Join us. Memphis are in the Western Conference and sit in 10th place out there with 6 points from 7 games played. Not in the hottest form right now, but it's always hard to play there. It's a really, really strange field. It's kind of gross. It's a literal baseball. I mean, it's Outlaying has been said to be a baseball stadium. Certainly not anymore. But this is an actual. It's a baseball stadium. Like there's clay out there. It's gross. It's terrible. It's terrible stuff. Yeah, whatever. Their last win was in the Open Cup versus Miami United amateur side. And then, sorry, that was their second to last win. Their latest win was against none other than Birmingham Legion FC. That's a fun one. We'll play them soon. And they went over to Birmingham and won 3-0. They play in a 4-2-3-1 with Tyler Derrick and net, Oscar Jimenez, Carson Vomsteeg, Lucas Turkey, and Akeem Ward in defense. In front of them sit Zach Duncan and Emerson Hindman, with Marlon, Bruno Lapa, and Dylan Borgzak attacking in the last game. Up top, several players have started. None has a league goal. That's not great if you're a team that plays soccer. You want your players to score goals, and nobody up top has a league goal for them. Leading that stat for them currently are Bruno Lapa and Samuel Cariaga with 2. Marlon has 2 assists. Again, not a lot of scoring. We'll save our predictions for later, James, or should we jump into that right now? Oh, are you muted?
We'll save it for after. I do want to get a little bit more perspective from 901 Soccer. I muted myself so I could type and make sure that everybody had the links they needed. But yes, we will save that for afterwards. And here we are, everyone, with Lawrence Dockery of the 901 Soccer Podcast, now part of Bluff City Media, covering Memphis 901 for us and giving us a real inside scoop because, as I was saying, Lawrence, I don't know a ton about Western Conference teams, unfortunately, and I do not know a ton about Memphis. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening and give me and the rest of the fans of the Tampa Bay Rowdies an actual idea of a team that exists out west, because surprisingly, I guess there are teams out there. Somehow they don't make it into our news feed, but they are out there and they are playing soccer. Thank you for helping us out with that.
Hey, no problem. But, this is 901 FC's first season in the Western Conference. We did spend the last 5 in the Eastern Conference and have a little bit of a history with the Rowdies. Obviously the very first game in Memphis 901 FC's history was against the Tampa Bay Rowdies at AutoZone Park. And that game was decided in the 3rd minute on a penalty. Then obviously, the painful and unfortunate playoff loss in 2022, right, when the road was laid out for us so perfectly, and you went from about to score a penalty in stoppage time to conceding a penalty in stoppage time, and but yeah, so we're in the West now, and it's long term, it might stink, and it's going to get expensive to travel to and from California 6 times this year.
Yeah,
but that's just part of it. So no, the coach Glass isn't complaining. The players aren't complaining. They're lacing them up and going out.
Well, that is good to hear. I would definitely be complaining if I were one of those players personally. But yeah, we wanted to have you on. Like I said, I don't have the greatest frame of reference for Memphis this year. We have done our little preview, but that's just based off of the record pretty much. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a ton of time to watch Memphis highlights or games this year like I have tried to do with other opponents. So I know that recently you guys, especially this past weekend, you got a 3-0 win away to Birmingham Legion. Mm-hmm. That's a very good result, honestly. But how has the team been doing recently and leading up to the game versus Legion?
So I'll start with to really kind of, I guess, tell the full story of the season. We need to go back to the off season. And I had been, and anyone who knows me is there are times when I'm very hard on this organization and on this team. And I've got my thoughts, and I know what I want, and what the reality is doesn't always reflect that. And so there are times when I'm very hard on this team. Sure. That being said, I thought they absolutely killed it this offseason. They had, and I've said it repeatedly, and that this was the best offseason in Memphis 901 FC history. They, between the players they were able to retain and the players that they brought in, they brought Kyle Murphy back from Miami FC. He had played here in 2021 and set the team record for goals in a season. And then, they brought in a lot of other really good pieces. And then, the rug almost got pulled out from them right at the last minute when Kyle Murphy announced his retirement. And 901 FC of old would have been in big trouble. But not 30 minutes later, they announced that in the wake of Kyle Murphy's retirement, they had signed Nico Brett, who scored the second or third most goals in league history.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we found out last week that he's out for the season now. But like they had a really good offseason, and they won their season opener. Even in the preseason, they got draws at Atlanta United and at Nashville SC from MLS. They played the University of Memphis and put in a very good performance and beat them there. And then they got a draw against St. Louis City's reserve team. So they had a really good offseason and a really good preseason. They won their season opener against the Las Vegas Lights, Night Pickering won goal of the week. Actually, this was probably the very first time I've ever seen an opposing team's owner come to AutoZone Park, and I got to share an elevator with Jose Batista, owner of the Las Vegas Lights, formerly of the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if he ever played for the Rays, but I know he played for a lot of teams. I don't know if the Rays were one of them, but I do need to mention that he might only be about my height, but his arms were like the size of my torso. It was
I don't doubt it.
But things, I don't want to use the word fell apart, but they won their season opener and then lost 5 straight regular season games. And
gotcha.
the thing about it is they had a really rough patch last year in July and August where they didn't win a game. They went 6, 7, 8, 9 games or something like that without winning a game. It was the entire month of July and then maybe 1 or 2 in August without a win. And it was rough. And there were a couple of games in that stretch. They lost 6-0 at Phoenix and 4-0 at home against San Antonio, where you thought, maybe they've just kind of, they went down a goal and they just said, the hell with it.
Right.
That hasn't been the case this year. One of the themes from assistant sporting director Caleb Patterson-Sewell, from Coach Glass, one of the themes has been, we're not necessarily looking for the best players. We're looking for the right ones. We want guys who want to be here and who are going to fight and scrap and claw and never give up. And I think that's been the case this year. And see, even in those games those 5 games in a row that they lost, they didn't, outside of the first half against Indy, they didn't look bad. Like, they were playing well. I think they were top 5 in the league in chances created. They had, the most recent home game was against Monterey Bay, and I think they had like 18 chances created in that game. But the only goal they was able to score was a crazy, ridiculous own goal from Monterey Bay. But bad teams don't create that many chances. Bad teams are just bad. And they have been, they in the middle of all of this, and they are separate but distinct competitions, but momentum's a real thing, and they got the ball kind of rolling again in the Open Cup against Miami United, who I don't know if you saw the report. It was only from one, like, beatthebookie.com or something like that, where the Miami United players had maybe gone in and bet on themselves to win their previous Open Cup game.
I did see that. Yeah.
So weren't really sure what to expect. And 901 FC was obviously, professional outfit against a non-professional outfit. And they put in a competent professional performance and beat them 2-0. Probably maybe could have been 3. But that really kind of, I don't want to say turned it around or got the, whatever you want to call it, but that kind of got the train back on the track, so to speak. And then they did have that loss to Monterey Bay. But even in their losses, they played Orange County and were the better team for 75 to 80% of the game. And there was a 3-minute stretch where out of nothing, Indy got 1 goal and then got a second goal in 3 minutes. And then at that point, your head's swimming and you don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
But there haven't been, I mentioned the Indy game, which is the second game of the year, and they were down 2-0 and they were down a man. Somebody got sent off in the first half. The refereeing in the game was not the best, but that's neither here nor there. And, but they found a way to get back in it. They got to go back, and they had a chance to tie it in stoppage time. So there's not any quit in this team. They're doing the right things, and you don't, 5 straight losses. There's something, you think there's probably something more than just being unlucky. But I think this past weekend, that 3-0 win on the road in Birmingham, that was the culmination of finally, like, breakthrough moment, I guess you could say, where they jumped on them early. Bruno Lapa got a goal in like the 3rd minute. They got a second goal in the 17th minute. And then in the second half, when Birmingham was really starting to crank up the pressure, they hit them on the counter with one of the most devastating goals I've ever seen. You went end to end in probably 8 seconds. Gotcha. It was impressive. I was actually fortunate enough to be on the road to cover that game. And media's the setup for media in that stadium in Birmingham, not the best. That leaves a lot to be desired.
Gotcha.
Is where I'll say that. But no, so 901 FC this season, the record is not great. Then Stephen Glass will be the first one to tell you that, I think.
Yeah.
But they haven't looked bad, and that sounds, I don't necessarily. That's one of the things that drives me crazy about soccer is, frequently, like in the Premier League or whatever, you'll see a team lose like 5-0, and the manager will come out, "Oh, I think we were the better team on the day." You lost 5-0. Shut up. That hasn't been the case here for 901 FC. They've come up short, and really they've only played one bad half of soccer.
Okay. Well, so if this is the culmination of the team's efforts, can you give us a glimpse into what the tactics are and how they have been trying to get that on track where they ultimately could win this game against Birmingham?
Well, see, the tactics of it are really that's not necessarily my wheelhouse. But I'll say it's also kind of hard to gauge what the tactics have been because there's been a lot of injuries and suspensions, and so they've kind of had to mix and match. I mean, we've had center backs playing right back. We've had after I mentioned that Indy game, Akeem Ward was sent off after the final whistle and given an extra 3 games. So he's one of the best right backs that's been out there. One of the best wing backs out there. So not having him for 3 games kind of throws everything into chaos. And then you've had various, like I mentioned earlier, Nico Brett's out for the season, so that's kind of thrown stuff out of whack. Fortunately, Knight Pickering, who's one of the bright young players on the team, has been called up for U.S. Youth National Team duty. Luckily, that happened to come at a time when 901 FC had their off week, which I found it strange to have your off week in the 3rd week of the season, but whatever. But he flew to Morocco, flew back to Memphis, flew to Sacramento, and flew home in the space of like 9 days. But they're one of the things that was kind of a point of emphasis this offseason is I initially had thought it was going to be more on attacking, and they sort of pushed back on that. They said, well, like we were last year at Media Day, Caleb said that, last year we were top 4 in the league in chances created. So apparently one of the points of emphasis was to kind of tighten up defensively. And as they put it, don't concede so many cheap goals. So they kept the clean sheet this past Saturday, 3-0 over Birmingham. But if there have been some goofy, cheap goals, and the Monterey Bay game and the Indy game, kind of like a quick 1-2 punch that sets your head spinning and you're not really sure what to do. Maybe a questionable penalty call here or there, but that was one of the points of emphasis, I guess, was to tighten it up defensively. And I think we're kind of starting to see that progress. I would also point to the 3rd game of the season was on the road at Sacramento. And that was a game where they had chances to win, even into like the 80th plus minute, and then they just gave up a late goal. So if they can figure out how to finally put the chances in the net and get it tightened up defensively, this is going to be a team that's going to be a problem for a lot of people, for a lot of other teams. It's but if they can't figure out how to get all those pieces together, if you can't get 22 healthy players so that you can, make the proper substitutions, have enough bodies ready to go on game day, that could be a struggle down the line. But they're doing the right things. They're playing well. They're not playing poorly. And I think this past Saturday, you finally saw something of a breakthrough.
Gotcha. So it's more, as far as I can tell, it's more of a case of a team being unlucky in terms of player availability in a lot of cases. But otherwise, you think that the pieces are there. What are the top pieces that you have noticed? I know that Bruno Lapa, I think, is on 2 goals, and the Brazilian winger Marlon is on 2 assists, if I'm not mistaken. Samuel Arteaga, I think, is also on 2 goals. Double checking my stats here. But yeah, who are the top performers that you've noticed so far?
Yeah, you mentioned Marlon Santos. He was a problem for Birmingham on Saturday. notwithstanding, even the first goal was just a gorgeous inch perfect cross for Bruno Lapo to tap in from 7 yards out. There were a couple of other ones that were forced out for corners that were. I mean, it was whoever the Birmingham left back was having nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Marlon Santos had a really good game against Birmingham on Saturday. Mentioned Bruno Lapo. He got 2 goals this past weekend. He is he's one of those guys that you know what you're going to get from him. He's steady, he's consistent, he's stable. You know, he's not very, very rarely is he ever going to do something just stupid. You know, if there's a glaring, ridiculous mistake that happens out there, it's not going to be from him.
Gotcha.
Up front, probably the best healthy striker on the roster now is Knight Pickering, who I mentioned. He got I believe 2 goals in the Open Cup game. He got a goal in the season opener against Vegas, which won goal of the week. You know, he's one that even the local media here has taken notice of Knight Pickering. They ran a feature story for him on Channel 24 about his start you know, rise up through I think it was the FC Dallas Youth Academy. He signed here as the youngest player in team history. But you know, as young as he is, it's really impressive to see how well he carries himself and how professional he is at just 19 years old. Then I think probably one of the more impressive but under the radar signings was a guy named Zach Duncan, who they snagged from a club in Denmark, if I'm not mistaken. He's originally from Australia, and they brought him here from Denmark, and he is the engine that makes the midfield go. In previous years, you could say that was Leston Paul, who is still with the team. He's he's the last remaining player from the inaugural season in 2019. He's the captain, but he's kind of transitioning more into like a mentor role with an eye on becoming a coach. And that was kind of something that they had announced when they extended his contract, and they said, "Hey, look, part of this is going to be he's with an eye towards the future of coaching." But I mean, Leston Paul's still here, but I think. Engine in the midfield, you know, the last 2 years it was either Leston Paul or Aaron Malloy, who is now in Charleston, and but now it's Zach Duncan. He makes things happen. He is it was an under the radar signing because it wasn't necessarily you know, one that had a ton of sex appeal like Kyle Murphy or Nico Brett or Noe Meza from Union Omaha, but you know, it's one that, you know, he does the dirty work that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. That's that commentators across all sport like to say, "Oh, this doesn't show up in the stat sheet," but you know, you know, if there were, I don't remember what game it was, but I think there was a game where he had to go out injured, and you could immediately tell that that things were not moving the way they needed to be moving when he went out injured. And then, you know, in goal, Tyler Derrick has been a very good signing. You know, he spent a lot of time with the Houston Dynamo in MLS, and then the last couple of years with the Rio Grande Valley Toros, may they rest in peace. And so he actually probably, I would say, had his best game this past weekend. If you looked at the scoreline 3-0, you would think Memphis was fairly dominant, but Birmingham had a number of really good chances, and Tyler Derrick made a number of really good saves. I don't remember what the exact number was, but it had to be 6, 7, or 8 of them. And I think he's actually up for save of the week this week. So there's a lot of really good signings. The pieces are there. The pieces are there. Now one of the concerns is going to be depth, which they really did attempt to address in the offseason. And for whatever variety of reasons, the depth just hasn't necessarily been there.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I had to pick, I'd say probably Zach Duncan and Marlon Santos. You know, they're not lighting the stat sheet up with goals. You mentioned Arteaga. He is they signed him late last year. I want to say like September of last year maybe, and he was kind of like the spark plug guy off the bench, like the super sub. And he scored a great free kick against Loudoun a couple of weeks ago. But I would say probably Zach Duncan and Marlon Santos have been probably the most impressive to me thus far of the new signings.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking this much time to help us out in terms of getting a real read on the Memphis team this year and what we should try to expect when we play them up there. So my last question for you, and again, I know that most people don't really like to do this, but if you could give us a score prediction, we do appreciate it. We've got a little tally going here, and we do try to get those guest guess predictions as frequently as we can. So what do you think this game is going to be?
Well, I guess my first question is your coach isn't going to get himself tossed out for launching a water bottle across the field this time, is he?
Well, we do. It is a different coach, so it's another Scottish coach, but he does seem to have a temperament that is a lot calmer and generally a lot slower to get angry. That being said, I'm sure that there's something that could push him to get there.
And I do have to say, since I did bring it up, that game here in Memphis last year, I think kind of was the turning point. That's the game where Memphis really got back rolling after that long losing streak that I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Where you felt that, like, okay, they're not just in the hunt for the playoffs, they're in the hunt for a home playoff game. And that was the game. If was it Nicky Law was the coach for that game? Because I seem to remember whoever the actual head coach is wasn't there because of some, like, he was in England because of some visa issues or something. So they had an interim that night, and whoever the interim was is who yeeted the water bottle across the field.
Yeah, Nicky Law was the head coach for the second half of the season, but he was also there for a while because Neil Collins was doing his coaching badges. But I think it might have also been the game against Memphis when Nicky Law wasn't even there and Stuart Dobson was taking over as the head coach because Nicky Law had his own issues. So you might be right. Yeah,
I think that might have been what it was. But if it was silly because he was arguing like, I think it was a penalty or something, and the referee went over and gave him the yellow card, and that's when he decided to turn around and kick the water bottle, woo, whatever, like he was Martin Gramatica.
Yes,
in the Super Bowl.
Martin Gramatica.
And I have do I have time for a fun Martin Gramatica story real quick?
Go for it.
Okay, so are you familiar with the NISL team in Tampa? That Martin Gramatica is the coach of.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the Strikers. Yes, that's it. So the Americans, we used to have a team here for 2 years, the Memphis Americans. And when Tampa came here, Martin Gramatica was coaching. And one of the referees on the game is a guy from Memphis who was actually an assistant referee at the 2006 World Cup in Germany.
Okay.
And I don't know that he did any games, but he was part of the delegation that went over. Well, one of the Tampa players got called for a foul, and Gramatica went nuts, like bonkers, wild, nuts. I've never seen anybody lose control like that in a game. And granted, it's minor league indoor soccer, so who really cares? But he got the red card, and he went off to the locker room, and at halftime came back on the field and yelled at the referee some more. Finally went back into the locker room, tried to come back out for the second half, and the DeSoto County Sheriffs had to escort him back into the locker room.
Wow.
And then we had a post-game brawl break out in front of the locker rooms after the game. I think I've got the tweet from the 901 Soccer Podcast floating around somewhere. Somebody was down there and sent me the video. It was wild. I was still upstairs at the top of the arena packing my laptop up and stuff. And all of a sudden, you hear all this commotion from the nether regions of the arena.
Yeah.
And anybody with a Lander Center shirt took off. I'm like, oh, there's a brawl going on then there. Bloodied, bruised, several players. I mean, it was wild. And that was Martin Gramatica stirring all of that up.
Jeez.
That league, by the way, I don't have anything good to say about that league. Issues with players being paid, issues with referees being paid.
We have heard a little bit about that, and Carlos said he wants to do some podcast series on it, but we have to get the right contacts first, I guess. So, but I think we generally do agree with your stance.
Yeah. So anyway, but back to the original point of Dobson launching the water bottle. If after he's sent off, after he's shown the red card for kicking the bottle, if he just leaves, 901 FC doesn't have the time to come back and win that game against Tampa the way they did last year.
Right.
Because because they had to add all that time because he wouldn't leave, and if he just left, it would have finished a draw. And then I was going somewhere else. I had one other point to make about that, but I have forgotten what it was. But as far as a prediction, oh Lord, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say given how I get Jekyll and Hyde isn't necessarily the right right turn of phrase for 901 FC, but I think with the fact that they are coming on strong, 2 wins in their last 3 games across all competitions, both of which were clean sheets. I'm going to call it. What did Tampa do this past weekend? I saw that they had some highlights, but I don't remember who won the game.
3-0 win versus New Mexico.
Okay. That might have to change my pick a little bit. This sounds like it might have draw written all over it.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm gonna be a homer. Why not? We'll call it 3-2 win. I think it's going to be a fun. We'll call it 3-2 win. I think 901 FC has finally found the recipe, as it were, for success in front of goal. They took their chances this past weekend, and I don't think that was an aberration. I think that is a kind of a culmination. A couple of weeks ago, Coach Glass said that the emphasis the last several training sessions had been putting the ball in the back of the net, and the lads liked that a lot, as he said. So I think we'll call it a 3-2 Memphis win.
Okay.
I think Tampa's a better team than Birmingham. I think they're more just organizationally and team-wise. I think they're a more well-oiled machine than Birmingham, and I think and the counterpoint is, Birmingham did have a good number of chances, and I don't know that Tyler Derrick is going to be up to making 8, 9, 10 saves in a second straight game. So this feels like it's got goal written all over it, but I'm going to go a 3-2 barn burner for 901 FC.
Okay. Hey, that's fine. We will take it and put that in the prediction machine and see what comes out this weekend. But
what do I get if I'm right?
So at the end of the season, we're trying to see who gets the most points, and ultimately that person will get some prize, and we don't know what it would be, but the guest would get, we have 10% off RBLR shop. That's from producer Eureka. But other than that, yeah, we have still yet to determine what the proper prize should be for the winner. And if it is the guest, it has to be something that we can send to everybody who gave a prediction. So that'll be a little difficult, but we're trying to figure out what it should be.
I'm content because if my prediction's right, that means Memphis got the 3 points. So
that's right.
I'll be more than happy just to take the joy of being right.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's a good stance to take. Well, Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate all of your help. Like I said, it is definitely good for us to get a real perspective on what's going on in Memphis, and we'll do this with other clubs as well. But thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Now, Carlos, that was a great interview that we had. And with all of that out of the way, give me your prediction here.
James, I'm the eternal optimist. You know me. You know where this is going to go. We're scoring. We're hot on all cylinders. I do think it's a weird place to play, so there's some anomalies always. I think in this case, we're still going to come out with a win. They did just beat Birmingham Legion 3-0, scored a decent amount of goals there. But I do think we win this game 2-1. I think it's a little bit close. I don't think we blow this team out. I think we're a better team than Memphis currently. But I do think it's a weird game always when we go over there. I think we can pull out a win, but they certainly get on the score sheet too because it's a really strange place to play. But I do think we get on the score sheet. Kyle Jennings goal, Manuel Arteaga goal, because when one scores, the other one does too. I think we come out of there with 3 points.
Okay. I am going to take a draw on this one just because the field is a little weird. I will take a 0-0 draw, and Eureka, our producer, will take a 2-2 draw. That will add to our guest prediction, obviously, from our guest host here. And let's get into extra time real fast, Carlos. I wanted to go with Oakland Roots first, who fired their coach after a rough start. Obviously, that's unfortunate. But I believe it is Gavin Glinton who now takes over in a interim role. So fair enough there. USL League One also has announced that they have a team from Portland, Maine, and they will be joining the league, I believe, next year. But they are now going to be known as the Portland Hearts of Pine. It's actually a very nice crest. Branding. Yes. Yeah. It is a really, really great crest and good branding. So I'm really happy with that. If I see Cameron this weekend, he usually shows up to all of our watch parties. I'm going to talk to him about that because that looks really cool. USL League One will also supposedly be expanding to Westchester, New York in 2025. There is reporting that is going to happen. It is not confirmed at this point, but there are reports out of journalist Gary Stern who I believe is based up there. So we shall see exactly how this goes. I don't have a ton of information about it just yet, but that is out there in the ether, and I figured I would let everybody know. And Carlos, we can't get into too much of this right now because it's all very early, but I'm gonna turn it over to you for this next one.
I'm not gonna label it sad USL news, but Indy 11 may face some sort of existential threat from MLS. Currently, there was that weird kind of announcement with the Indianapolis owner announcing that they're going to be pursuing an MLS franchise. No mention of Indy 11 whatsoever. No mention of the culture they built up there. No mention of who would be pursuing that MLS, franchise. If it would be Indy 11, if it would be some other group. It's kind of developing situation. There's not really much to say other than it's weird and it's annoying, and it is kind of just another attempt from MLS to monopolize the game in the U.S. We've seen it before. Try to go to Detroit, a successful lower league market. They've tried to go to Sacramento. I mean, Phoenix has been in the talks. Tampa Bay has always been in the talks for the past several years. Kind of putting out these feelers constantly to, I think, scare the USL folks into getting a little frustrated, and then here comes MLS franchise. Next thing you know, USL team goes out the window. So it's a weird situation. We'll see what happens with Indy. It's frustrating as a fan of a USL team, but it is what it is, and we'll just have to see how it plays out for now. Anything to add on that, James?
No, other than pure frustration, pure head-pounding frustration, but we can't do anything yet, and we can just hope for the best. If we get our marching orders from Indy 11 fans, we will obviously do that. Okay, now, the last little bit here. Don't forget our first watch party in 2024 for RBLR Sports at Berry House, May 4th at 4 p.m. Please join us, folks. We really would love to make this the first one of the year, the best one of the year, until we have another one, obviously.
Absolutely. It's a fun time. It's Berry House. I heard something about beer pitcher specials. It's Ybor. It's so much fun. You can stick around and spend the evening in Ybor, and I'm sure you won't remember much of it with the drinks flowing there. It'll be a blast. Come join us and have a good time as the Rowdies completely destroy Memphis 901 FC in dominating fashion when they win 6-0, of course. Oh, James, jumping into the next bit. This is fun, and I'm so excited to talk about this. Open Cup is finally here. The Rowdies will host Birmingham Legion in the Open Cup Wednesday, May 8th, and then we'll play them again on the weekend just because we can, and U.S. soccer is a lovely, thrilling roller coaster of an experience. Why not? Let's play them back-to-back and sweep them while we're at it, baseball terms. Last thing I'll throw in here, James, before we wrap up the extra time segment. My boy, Aiden Rocha, Georgetown Hoya, one of my friends, scored in the USL. He got his first USL goal. I'm so happy for him. Juan Tejada scored that same game as well. Aiden Rocha and Juan Tejada linking up over there. So much fun. It's great to see. And they're going to kill it for Colorado, even if it's gotten off to a slow start currently. But let's not talk about that. They'll pick it up, and I'm sure Colorado will be in great form sooner rather than later.
All right. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate when you do. We had a lot to cover this week, obviously, and we appreciate you sticking around for all of it. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, and everywhere else at RBLR Sports. Carlos, what about you on Twitter?
At Carlos DPA10 on Twitter. Always tweeting about everything. Rowdies, Georgetown Sports, Ecuadorian soccer, the existential threat of graduation looming and having to find a job and paying taxes and everything. Come join my experience as I join the world of real adulthood.
And I am mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K. You can like and subscribe to our podcast, and you can get the full experience as well on YouTube. We are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, wherever you are, we are too. Now, for another week and another game coming up with a watch party, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.